Hello, this is your test on the Bach. I can't prove that you have got the book shut and all the answers shut, but this is the way I would like you to tackle it, and I'll tell you why. I would like you to watch this video through with me while I talk through all the questions, because that's what I would do in a normal lesson. If I were giving you your first test on the Bach, I would explain all the questions, so I'm going to do that now. But then I'm going to give you the opportunity to go away as a diligent student, revise again, trying to remember some of the questions, trying to look out for some of the points, because I want you to do well. But I don't want you to answer this test with all the answers in front of you. I want you to watch it through with me, go away and revise, come back and do it with nothing else available to you. You will watch the start of this video again, because I'm going to play some music for you, and you're going to need music for at least two of the questions, which refer to the extract. When it says extract, that means not the whole piece, just the bit we're listening to. So how do you do that? Well, with this test paper, you would normally have it printed out in front of you. I would recommend that you print this out. So how do you get it to me? I would also recommend that you take a screenshot of each page and email me the answers. Rather than Moodle, I would go with email. It is possible, of course, to type the answers directly onto the page, but that's a bit problematic because you're going to have to take out all of these dots to type up the answer, and the formatting will move around, and that's so if you were to type up an answer here that says turns, that worked really well because I'd highlighted the dots. If I tried to type in turns without highlighting the dots, then the dots are going to move, and if you get really long answers, it's going to start turning into many pages. So if you want to type up answers, highlight the dots and type your answers directly in. So that's one way of doing it. Of course, you can't type up the answer to question 1 because that requires you to handwrite the answer. So question 1 is a dictation. In other words, I'm going to play this music for you, and then you're going to write out the 3 missing notes, and there is the rhythm. And actually, there should be a 3 underneath that, because it's another triplet just like that. I don't think Bach wrote the 3, but you're going to drop those 3 notes into this section of music here, and you're going to write out an answer. So if you thought that the answers were C sharp, D, and B, then you would write them in nice and clearly and put the tails on and join them up. If you write something like this, which could be more than 1 note, you're going to get a wrong answer. So you have to make sure that your notes are clearly on the line, in the gap, but not big enough to be unreadable. So you'll only know that from listening to the music. So there we go. Let's take those out. So question 1, we're now going to go through the whole test. Question 1 is music from the Bach. It's the main theme that you will have heard many times by now, and I want you to work out what the missing notes are here. Obviously, you could cheat easily by looking at the score, but please don't do that. Have a listen and see if you can work them out by ear. Question 2, nice and simple. The harpsichord part uses quite a lot of which type of ornament? An ornament is a decoration. I wrote in the word turn is wrong. So there's a nice easy start there. Question 3, where precisely in terms of the structure is this extract from? So you're going to have to listen to this and work out exactly where, I'm not going to tell you the structure, it comes from. So we're not talking about the beginning, the end, we're going to use specific terms for the structure. There are 2 ways of describing the structure. So where is it from? And what is the Italian term for the tempo of this extract? Well, of course, we know if you watch the videos that the tempo doesn't change, so we just want the Italian term of the tempo marking. What type of cadence is heard within the first few bars of the extract? And there should be, of course, a question mark there. So you're going to need to listen to it to make sure that you're not just guessing, and then write down the cadence. As you can see that this has been reformatted while I've been speaking. This extract begins in the tonic key, D major. That's our home key. There is a modulation, that's a change of key, a modulation, to the middle section of the complete movement. In other words, when it says complete movement here, you are not going to complete movement. That means we're not talking about the extract anymore, because the extract may not have the answer for you. So of the complete piece, we start in D major. Which of these four keys does it modulate to? And put a circle around whichever you think is the right key. For some reason it won't let me undo that now. Okay. What is the relationship of this new key to the tonic key? So the key that you've identified in question 5, how does that relate to the new key? Or how does the new key relate to the tonic key? There are two ways of explaining that, depending on which one you start with, the new key or the old key. But you should be able to find the answer out. Name the harmonic device. Well, device, remember, device just means composition trick. So there are a couple of videos worth watching where I explain precisely what the most likely devices are going to be. If they're melody, it would be a melodic sequence, a rising sequence, but this one is a harmonic device. So there are 2 or 3 harmonic devices. Pick the one that best tells us about the bass notes being repeated. Okay. The piece is in ternary form. What is another name for that? That's where you would write that or type that. Again, if you're going to type it, highlight all the dots, and that way it will just replace that. Explain away that this structure, ternary form, or the other name here, can be used to create contrast. So here's a good thing that I need to explain. I have left you 2 3/4 lines of information to add. That means if you're going to give me 1 line of information, there's no way that you can get 2 marks. So 2 marks requires 2 points. Okay, 2 different things, or 2. We're looking at 1 way. So how can you make 2 different things? Well, you'd have to explain the contrast. Maybe identify it would be 1 point, and then explain why that gives us contrast would be your second point, and that's why you need extra room to make that count. And that's clear. You only get 1 mark for telling me what the contrast could be, but another mark for explaining that in a sophisticated way. It's part of Concerto Grosso. Now, Concerto Grosso is a concerto for a group of players, okay? But I want you to unpick that. So I've given you the answer really there, but explain what it means by looking at all the different groupings involved. And there are more than 1 grouping. In fact, I'm going to help you out here and say there are 3 groupings that we should be looking at. 3 groupings that in a Concerto Grosso. And some of that will mean that you have to understand which period the Concerto Grosso is in. Otherwise the groupings won't make sense. So 4 marks. How are you going to turn 3 comments for identifying them into 4 marks? Well, you're going to have to explain why we need those groupings perhaps. And I want all that space filled if you want 4 marks. Question 9. There's a whole video on rhythm, so you should be able to answer this nice and straightforwardly. Describe. That's an important word. Describe the main rhythmic features of this extract. So you could talk about the meter, but that's not describing it. You would have to explain why the meter was chosen. You would have to explain why the note values in one bit of the harpsichord part might be appropriate for this piece. So describe means not just identify and tell me what they are, but give me a reason why that's appropriate for this piece. And again, there's a whole video on that, so make sure you go and watch that again. If you want 3 marks, you've got to make 3 points, fill up the spaces. What is significant about the harpsichord writing for this piece? In other words, this piece was a turning point in the way the harpsichord was written for. And what was that turning point? What was the new thing? Question 11. This movement incorporates. Incorporates just means uses. This movement uses elements of both a fugue and a gigue. Well, do you remember what a gigue means? Remember what a fugue is? Remember, it's not really a fugue, is it? It's fugal. Fugal means elements of a fugue. So we've got some fugal things and we've got some gigue things. Which things of a gigue are used in this piece? Which things of a fugue, of a fugal, are used in this piece? And again, you'd be expected to fill up the entire lines. Good. Which elements of this piece make it a typical piece from the Baroque period? And there are 4 spreading over the page. I try not to do that, but I couldn't help it. So again, you can see for each element there are 2 lines. So I expect you to write enough to fill those 2 lines. Obviously, if it's a line and a half, that's fine. Or if you're typing, it might be a bit smaller because typing is smaller than writing. But don't just identify, but say something about it. What is the thing that is typical from the Baroque period, and maybe why it's used in the Baroque period? That's a harder thing. So don't just say, for example, if it was the use of a tuba, which it isn't. There's no tuba in this piece. The use of a tuba. Wow. Why is that typical? It wouldn't be typical because there are no tubas in the Baroque period, but you'd have to say something about it to fill up those tuba lines. That's for your 4 marks. The accompanying basso continuo. So the first thing you're going to need to work out and remember is, what is a basso continuo? I've told you here it's made up of at least 2 instruments. Okay. So what are the 2 different types of instruments? And why do we need both of them in the Baroque period? So yes, you could tell me what the 2 instruments are that make the basso continuo up, but you can see that's not going to fill in that space and it's not going to give me 3 marks. So you're going to have to explain why we need one instrument, why we need the other instrument, and why we need them at all in the Baroque period. So 3 separate areas to get your marks from. Question 14. Hope I've left you enough. I've tried to cram it up small enough to fit on to 4 pages. You just need to fill in the 2 words here and then the other here. And I've given you the starting letter because it's a bit confusing. The harpsichord part uses something beginning with F and then another word to help the player know which harmonics to use. The player has to, and then a word beginning with R. What does the player do with this information to create the music in the right hand? And you get 2 marks. Obviously, this word beginning with F, the 2 words here is just 1 mark. You've got to get both of them right. Number 15. The texture at the start of the piece is, well, you can't really go on how many dots I've left there because it could be a short answer or a long answer depending on how you describe it. There's more than one right answer for that. But the main texture throughout is what? Typical of the Baroque period. The opening section is a special type of texture called, now there's the shorter answer. So I've forgotten that. The texture at the start of the piece is, but the main texture throughout is, and the special texture it. So this word here, the very start of the piece is the important bit. The very start. It's over really quickly, but so you've got to be really careful. The very start of the piece, just the very start, that's a different texture. And we know there's a special texture at the beginning, but that's not it. It creates this by combining, and then there are two really melody terms here that combine together to create that texture. What are they? Number 16. The passages between these sections are freer and allow the soloists to show off or to shine. Now, I haven't used this word, I don't think, in any of the videos. So it begins with E, and you're going to have to go and research what the passages between all of the really complicated textures, when the instruments are showing off, what are they called? A little bit of research for you. And the extended melodic writing beginning with F, what's that called? And lastly, name any other Baroque composer. So when you've finished this, you've downloaded it and either typed it up or handwritten it, and either taken photographs of it or emailed it back to me in some way. So you're either going to take photographs or you're going to email it to me as a Word document. And I just want to go back to the first question. I don't know why that highlight would go. And that first question, what are you going to do here? Well, if you wanted to type it up and you couldn't type in here, I will accept that you type up the letter names. So if you thought it went, let's have a look. Let's say you thought it went E, B, G, then you could just write E, B, and G there, and I will take that as your answer. Good luck. This test should take you about 45 minutes, and I will mark this personally and let you know how you got on.